Some time ago, I wrote a Christmas story. I wrote it for children just like you. It's called Archie and the Amazing Four-Poster Bed. So gather round and let's begin. Archie and the Amazing Four-Poster Bed. It was almost Christmas, and Archie and his mum were looking at all the toys in the toy shop. By the window was a big four-poster bed, and nearby an enormous jar of marbles. The shop manager said there was a competition to guess how many marbles were in the jar. "Can I have a guess?" Archie asked his mum. "Why not?" his mum said. "What have you got to lose?" And he'd won. The manager telephoned Archie's mum to say that his guess was the nearest by 50 marbles. It was the first competition Archie had ever won in his life. In fact, it was the first of anything. Races, football matches, fancy dress competitions, you name it, that Archie had ever won. He had to go round to have his photo taken with the local newspaper and collect his mystery prize. His mum said, "Son, you're a genius." Archie was so proud and happy, he thought he might burst. And what a prize it turned out to be. Archie told everybody in his school about it. On Christmas Eve at 5 o'clock, after the toy shop closed, Archie would be allowed to jump into the massive four-poster bed in the shop window. His mate Charlie said, "I wouldn't want to go to bed at 5 o'clock. That's a pathetic prize." Archie answered Charlie with a big grin on his face, "But Charlie, that's not all. The best bit is I can get up whenever I want to. I can play with all the toys, and I can pick any toy I want to take home." Charlie was gobsmacked. How fantastic! Going to bed in a toy shop and then waking up and choosing anything you wanted. Archie thought he would never be able to wait until the big day arrived. It is true that Christmas Eve seems to take longer to arrive than any other day of the year, but eventually it came at last. After the toy shop closed, there were loads of Archie's friends outside who'd come to see him in the massive four-poster bed. He gave them all a big wave and climbed in. The bed was soft and warm, and as Archie slid under the big duvet, he smiled at everybody, winked at Charlie, and closed his eyes. And that's when it happened. Archie only planned to stay in bed for 10 minutes. He wanted to start playing with all those toys, but he fell asleep. His friends from school started shouting at him to get up. Then they tried banging on the window. In fact, they banged so loudly, the shop manager came along and told them off. Then Archie thought he heard noises, as if people were tapping loudly on a window. But those sounds faded away, and he heard something else instead. Bah! 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 Archie opened his eyes. He was in a field with lots of sheep and a man wearing what looked like his mum's tea towel on his head. "Are you coming with us to see the new baby?" the shepherd asked. Archie didn't want to be left alone in a big field, so he said, "Okay." Because sheep walk so slowly, the journey seemed to take forever. Archie could smell the stable before they opened the door. It reminded him when he had to clean the rabbit out and he'd left it too long. One of the shepherds pushed open the stable door and they all crept in. And then Archie saw him, a tiny baby, all wrapped up and lying in one of the donkey's feeding trays. Archie looked and looked. He nudged one of the shepherds and whispered, "Who is he?" The man said, "His name is Jesus. An angel told us he's come into the world to show us how much God loves us." Archie stood on the straw next to the baby and just watched him. The shepherds bowed before the baby as if he was a king, and then one of them came forward and put a little lamb on the floor and said, "It's a little gift from me and the boys." Archie wished he could give the baby a present too. He felt so sad. "I'm sorry," said Archie. I haven't got anything to give him." The baby's mum smiled. "Don't worry. The best present is having you here. Go back and tell people not to forget him." Archie loved being in the stable, but after a while he felt so sleepy he tried very hard, but he just couldn't make himself stay awake. And suddenly he could hear his mum's voice from far away outside the stable. "I think we should wake him up now. It's 11:30. "I quite agree," said the manager. Archie opened his eyes, and for a moment he didn't know where he was. He blinked twice, closed his eyes again, and cuddled back under the duvet. It looked as though he was going to fall straight back off to sleep. So Archie's mum said something she said every morning when he had to go to school. "Come on, Archie, it's time to get up." Archie opened his eyes again, stretched his arms, and looked around. Where had the stable gone? And suddenly it all came back to him. He was in the 4-poster bed. He'd won the competition. He could choose any toy and take it home. He jumped out of bed and ran around the shop looking at all his favorite toys. And at last he pointed to a massive garden slide. Can I have that, please?" "Can't you pick something a bit smaller?" said his mum. "How will we get it home?" "Don't worry, Mrs. Crabshaw," said the shop manager. "We'll deliver it tomorrow." And suddenly they heard the town hall clock striking midnight. And that's when the strangest thing happened. Archie shouted, "Happy birthday!" His mother and the toy shop manager looked at him in surprise, and then he yelled it again, "Happy birthday!" "Is it your birthday, Mrs. Crabshaw?" asked the manager. Archie laughed. "No, I don't mean my mum. I mean Jesus. It's Jesus' birthday. You wouldn't like somebody to forget your birthday, would you?" The manager smiled. "You're right, son. I wouldn't like it at all if people forgot that." "I've had the best prize tonight that anybody could ever have," said Archie. "Yes," said the manager, it's a lovely slide." No, I don't mean that," Archie started to say. But then he stopped himself. He walked over to the slide, patted it once and said, "Yes, it's a fantastic prize." The manager knew something was going on, but he just couldn't work it out. The manager walked Archie and his mum to the door, put out the lights, and began to lock the shop up. It was snowing when they got outside, and they turned to look one more time at the big 4-poster bed. And suddenly Archie's mum frowned and said, "Well, how did that get there?" "What?" said Archie. "Those bits of straw on the pillow." The manager said, "Oh, it must be some yellow tinsel from our Christmas decorations." Archie grabbed his mum's hand. "Come on, Mum, let's go and I'll tell you what happened." And all the way home, he had the biggest smile on his face that you've ever seen.
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed that or found it helpful, please do click the like button. If you're new to the channel, you can subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about all our latest videos. Finally, if you're in a position right now to support Care for the Family, you can do so following the link in the video description. As a thank you, we'll send you a load of resources for you and your family. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.